If you're lucky, once in your lifetime, every now and then, you get to pick up a game that feels so familiar and yet is completely new. On the surface, Tunic appears to be just a Zelda-inspired adventure where you play as an adorable fox in their green tunic. But beneath that exterior is a world of discovery, challenge, and mystery. The game consistently pushes the player to think differently and to challenge their expectations of their own limitations. Everything appears to be right where you need it to be, right when you need it, and it feels organic in the sense that you've discovered it on your own, but the developers left it for you there the whole time. In this way, the game confidently wears the love letter to earlier Zelda titles like Link's Awakening on its sleeve. And those traditional gameplay modalities intrinsically motivate the player to interact with and explore the world. Along with all the other triumvirate themes in Tunic, there are three major categories comprised of subsets of mechanics that make Tunic such a great game. First is the presentation through the sound and the visuals. Second is the interaction with the game through the combat and exploration. And lastly, but of course not least, is the depth of the game through the secrets and the atmosphere the developers left for players to discover naturally. Tunic allows the player to explore and engage with the game's world organically, and I can't wait to continue to explain to you why I love this game so much and why it enraptured me the way it did. Tunic starts like any promising adventure. You wake up on a beach, you get a stick, beat some slimes to death with that stick. Beginning the game felt exactly how I imagined the developers intended it would feel. There's an ethereal tone to the game that the music complements perfectly as you load in and wake up into a rich and vibrant world. You'll bump around and notice you can't cut bushes to progress with a stick, so you need to look around for a sword. But you won't find a sword, so you'll keep bumping around until you find a locked door that needs a key. And maybe you do, or you don't find the key at this moment. But eventually, you'll stumble into a giant golden gateway and the game's story immediately kicks into gear. Without a word said, this should hook you. It's a clearly deep history that is not displayed to you haphazardly, where there's an old man who's like, "Oh, this world's actually very rich and deep, you're gonna like it." Opening the gateway, you're transported into what appears to be basically another dimension. The camera zooms out, and the developers use this a lot throughout the game to emphasize the space and scale of the world that you're navigating. And it never feels shallow. It never feels forced. It feels ephemeral. A moment that's fleeting, that you know you're not going to get back. The game pretty brilliantly guides you on your next 5 objectives throughout the game and generally how to interact with the world by making it so that you can't progress through this door without ringing these bells, which are your first 2 objectives in the game. And then after they open the door, signifying that you should come back here later and check on this once you've done that, you get a great moment of, well, I'll probably just let it speak for itself. Importantly, visuals are only half of the atmosphere. because the soundtrack, composed by Lifeformed and Janice Kwan, is a delicate and ethereal mix that has soothing ambient tones and haunting melodies that really stick in your mind. The combination of visuals and sound makes Tunic world feel alive and very foreign, almost like it's other dimensional. It's exploring a place that doesn't belong to you and that you're not necessarily welcome in. The game drives the player purely through interest of exploration, and you're nearly always rewarded for your curiosity. Every single corner, every nook, every cranny. It's really remarkable that the developers managed to cram so much into so little and use all the space so effectively in the game. As you adventure, you'll find all sorts of treasures and secrets, starting first by reassembling the game manual, which, as a small spoiler, that goal is going to stretch across the entirety of the game. As you continue to gather those, you'll learn about how to play the game, and you'll learn about the world in very subtle ways. It's brilliant and it's intuitive. You get 2 pages of the book at a time, and you're constantly being provided gameplay mechanic instructions along with hints and spoilers for upcoming enemies and locations. There's a real majesty about this experience because it's so comfortable. The game doesn't take itself too seriously. It plays like you're playing a game, literally and figuratively, in the sense that you are playing a video game while you're playing it. But when you enter the pause screen, there's this fuzzy CRT effect in the background of the game screen that you're currently paused on, and it's like in real life you're flipping through the manual. As you collect more and more pages and you're looking for hints and secrets and, tips and checking the map, it flips like you're actually reading a manual. It flips from page to page and zooms in and out, and you can get closer and inspect it. And it's just one of those experiences where as you look closer, you notice that there's little hints everywhere. There's little objects drawn in. There's all sorts of hints and guides drawn about, strewn about, and on pages that you get at very specific points in time. And it's like that experience of an older game where probably most people don't have that experience anymore. But where your older brother bought the game and made some notes in a manual, and then you get to play the game later, and now it's your turn. So while they're not there helping you, there is someone gently guiding your hand, and the answers are brilliantly always in your face, but you don't realize it until you're really looking for them. And that is such a rewarding and impressive gameplay experience that I'm amazed the developers managed to capture it in the way they did, to where it feels so genuine and heartfelt that it's almost like it elicits an emotional response. And if you don't have a nostalgia for this experience, I get the feeling that this game will develop a nostalgia for that experience in you, that one day in your life when you're playing other games, you'll look back and think upon Tunic and be like, I miss those days. I miss when a game captured me the way Tunic did. Notice the game switches pretty fast from a spiritual successor romp of early Zelda into the everything's gotta be Dark Souls camp. This isn't a Souls-like game in the sense of extreme difficulty, but it is a Souls-like game in the sense that the mechanics challenge you to be responsible with how you behave in the game. And while I don't enjoy Souls-like games broadly, I didn't realize that the formula used in this way would invest me into the game so much deeper. For a quick explanation, the Souls-like formula is you rest at shrines where you respawn after death, enemies respawn after you die. You drop some of your currency in an echo, which you can pick up if you don't die again before reaching it. Your items don't replenish after use, except for potions, which level up throughout the game. Bosses are the centerpiece of the combat experience. Usually, for the vast majority of the bosses in the game, are far beyond just upgraded versions of basic monsters, and nothing really uses the Zelda experience for the combat in the sense other than, wiggle your sword really fast and use some magic spells. There's none of the use an item you found in the dungeon 3 times punching bags like you get in a Zelda experience. So the blending of these two genres is nothing short of a masterpiece. The first boss is hard by comparison to the previous encounters, and it's something you just learn by trial and error. And it's a really, really good way to introduce the player, because that error and that error and that error and that error, it keeps coming, and it doesn't give you any respite until bliss. You're rewarded for your effort. The game goes quiet and gives you a moment to soak it in. And then you get to go out and ding the bell. And it's a clear indicator that you're on the right path and the game's unfolding before you. And of course, if you're a dipshit like me, you may not have realized that there was a sword the whole goddamn time. This is where the game really hammers home how important exploration is to the experience. That it will always reward you for every single corner you turn, everywhere you look, you will have a benefit to what you're doing. And the sword is an excellent way for the game to force you into that explorative mindset. It's an aspect of the game that's just generally brilliant. If you know where things are, the game's so much easier. Experience and curiosity makes you stronger. And this is such a significant intrinsic reward that you could go out and look everywhere and scour the world before doing anything, before fighting your first enemy potentially. And you could get a sword and a shield before the first boss. I personally went in with a stick and triumphed over that beast, you know? Like, it is what it is. Everyone gets to play the game differently, and that's part of the magic.
Oh my god. Oh, that is so cute. Chad, come look at this. Have you seen this? Look at this little character. Look at this little guy.
Exploration in Tunic is really never about just moving from point A to point B. And in fact, there's a large open section at the beginning of the game that allows you the option to go either left or right, to start one way or the other if you'd like, and the opportunity, if you get the chance, to enter secret codes if you're coming back on a new playthrough, to figure out new options and maybe start the game a little bit stronger than you should, or access areas that you shouldn't be accessing. And when you exit the quote-unquote tutorial aspect of the game, which would be the first 2 dungeons, which give you what tools you need to progress the game effectively moving forward, the last 3 dungeons in the game can be approached in any order. And while there are certain aspects that will make the game easier and probably a recommended order to approach these in, you can do them any way you want. And that includes accessibility settings and the options, like you can turn on no fail mode, you can turn on no stamina consumption mode, which of course undermines the fluid and perfected combat mechanics of the game, but it gives you the option to do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. So really there's an experience here for everyone. And there's something that's very special about that. The brilliance of Tunic is that the more you explore, the more interconnected everything becomes. The cliff you passed by hours ago might hide a pathway that leads to a completely new area. The locked door isn't just scenery, it's waiting for you to figure out the key, or maybe the secret to get in. And this is where concepts like the Golden Path and the Holy Cross come into play, which are huge aspects of the game, which you have no clue exist until very, very late, which is a brilliant design philosophy that rewards your curiosity and keeps you hooked longer and longer as the game goes, more invested, more willing, and more curious. You're constantly thinking and asking yourself, what am I missing? What else could be here? What haven't I tried? What haven't I utilized? What could I do differently? How could I adapt to the situation? And the world feels like it is a puzzle box that is so desperate and waiting for you to solve it, but never gives you more than everything you need to do it. It won't hold your hand. It's not going to tell you how to do it. It's just going to say, hey, if you're looking in the right place, you've got it. Tunic's secrets and its story are closely entwined to the point where they are completely inseparable from each other, but not dependent upon each other for the player's understanding. There's a lot of symbolism introduced in the game through the manual and the player's experience about life, death, the process and cycles of reincarnation, as well as general religious imagery that, without spoiling too much here, leaves a lot of room for interpretation, but so much depth for the user's way of understanding the systems at play. There are 2 levels in the game, the quarry and the cathedral specifically, that tie directly together, but without the context provided from the player's investigation and secrets seeking nature and curiosity of the library and the monastery, You can't really connect all the pieces and why the world is the way it is, but that doesn't affect the player's engagement with the story, because the new plot elements and the new concepts are integrated in such a way naturally into the gameplay that you feel compelled not only to engage with them through combat and, exploration, but you're also forced to engage with them on like a more critical, meaningful level during those comm points. There's, for example, a point in the quarry where you go into sort of the basement of a manufacturing facility. But as you walk through it, there are consequences for you being in this place that I think are best experienced in the moment, because the surprise is akin to something like almost a horror series, like when you're engaging in Resident Evil or Metroid, and it's just that hostility of like, you don't belong here. The game asks you why you feel welcome in these places through the most direct method, which is engaging the player head on. And there's something so romantic about that. There's something so enchanting to where you can't help but feel like it's your job to push further. You feel almost something outside of yourself, outside of your own interest, requires you to continue to push forward and continue to delve deeper to discover the secrets. Because while you may not like what you find, the best part of it all is digging. In the monastery itself / the library, there's an incredible character there called the librarian, who at a certain point in the game you will have the opportunity to speak with them. And I'm not going to translate anything they say, but the concepts that they engage with you upon are so fundamental to the developers' intention with the game that not only do you belong in a game and you're playing a game, like I referenced earlier in the video, but also that the entire world exists within the game itself. And the librarians seem to have been scratching on that surface, but of course, the player character gets in the way. And there's a lot of hidden Easter eggs that at first you might just notice and then be like, oh, that's chill, that's cool. But there's things that when you come back later with that newfound knowledge and discovery and interest, the world continues to flesh itself out. It's so unique in its application and presentation that it's something only a video game can do, because while you're experiencing it at your own pace, you're experiencing it in a very specific visual dynamic. Not only are set pieces individually provided to the player that elucidate the world and allow further context and knowledge about its existence, but there are specific scenes that just invoke a sense of wonder and grandeur. But these don't only exist to impress the player. It exists to force the player to remain curious, to continue to ask questions. And this relates so perfectly back to the encapsulating retro familiar game feel, in the sense that the world is captured. It's like when you'd play Spyro 1 for the original PlayStation. You would have this moment of like, what's beyond the mountains? If I could fly to the edge of the skybox, what would I find there? And of course, logically, going back, the answer is nothing. The programmers didn't put anything out there, and if they did, it wasn't necessarily meant for the player to be found. That is the entirety of Tunic's gameplay. There really is something always on the horizon, not necessarily in the skyboxes or anything like that, but since everything in the game is accessible,
what a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill.
the only things you can't do are boundary break, but really it doesn't feel like the game has any boundaries because it lets you do and go everywhere you want. And the only spot that is restricted to you at any point in the game through any meaningful blockade of like, you know, time after time solving this, solving that, is the mountain door. The mountain door is an incredible roadblock in the game's experience because the key to it is solving the golden path. And the key to solving the golden path is adding up all of your experiences, knowledge, and curiosity in the game to a culminating point, that final puzzle. And I will absolutely not give any solutions here. There's been a few clips throughout the video so far that have elucidated what the golden path is, and you could freeze frame and probably solve it yourself if you haven't played the game yet. But I highly encourage absolutely anyone who has ever solved a single puzzle in their life to play through Tunic, to play through all the way to the end, find all the secret treasures on your own. Please don't look up a guide, and solve the golden path on your own, because this is one of those unforgettable, potentially once in a lifetime, satisfactory gameplay experiences where you will absolutely never forget what you've done. And I'm not going to hold the pen and paper that I used to solve the golden path for the rest of my life. I'm not going to frame it, or put it anywhere in the house or share it with my friends. But it is one of those things that I will always look back on and have the muscle memory, the sight memory, the smell of what I was drinking at the time. I had a nice matcha latte, and just soaking it in for like an hour and a half of just solving this puzzle. And then when I did it and I solved it and it went through, the enormity of the weight of my satisfaction of success is immeasurable. Still flutters over something so simple yet so complex. It is the pinnacle of satisfaction of human emotion, I think, because the reward at the end of it all is not a new incredible weapon. It's not a piece of armor. It's not a code that makes the game super easy. It's simply the first page of the manual. And it's a thank you from the developers for enjoying their game. And there's something so special about that compared to the credits of a game or something like that, where there's a thank you at the end and they're just happy that you played along. It really feels like the developers of Tunic had a vision, completely implemented every aspect of that vision that they desired to the peak of their abilities. And their abilities were absolutely everything. Something about the culmination of this group of people, the culmination of the sound design, the visual design, the gameplay design, and the thoughts and minds of the people who just wanted to be a little quirky, add a few secrets, and then who knows how it was all done in what order. But the way it all culminates at the Golden Path is such a unique experience in gaming that it's like, it almost makes me emotional. There's no way that I can compliment the developers of Tunic enough to express like the emotional effect that such a positive gaming experience has had on me. It's one of those moments where you wonder if you will capture that magic again. Like, there was a point when you were younger, or when I was younger, that I played a game for the last time that was going to treat me the way Tunic did, that was going to make me feel the way Tunic did. And that day came and went. And you don't realize it when you're in it, you just realize when it's gone. And to get that moment again is so heartwarming. It's so spiritual. It's really something that I needed. I thought I was rug pulled. I was like, oh my god, it's going to be another roguelike, Souls-like, every other light kind of game. And then I rang the bell and was like, oh no. Not only am I going to finish this game, I'm going to 100% complete the game. When I finished beating Tunic and I completed the Golden Path, scribbled notes all over a piece of paper, solving the puzzle, I was so upset that I was done, that there wasn't more. And in the most beautiful way that a game can do that, it was the perfect length. It didn't overstay its welcome. It's these moments that live with you forever. And who knows what I'll do later on in life, but I know for a fact I'll tell people about Tunic. I hope to play Tunic again someday, maybe remembering some of the codes and stuff like that. And I hope to get that experience again. And I hope to share this experience with as many people as I could and can, because Tunic is a game that doesn't deserve to be not known. It deserves everything it is. And I hope if companies like Nintendo can release a game that's half the game Tunic is in the future, I'd be impressed. Tunic is a perfect 10 out of 10. It is a game that if you give it your time, it will give you the world back. And I wouldn't have it